Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, your guide to understanding how to get out of the Wall Street rat race and start your own mailbox money lifestyle. Now, don't let the handsome Southern draws fool you. These financial minds are teaching our country to enhance savings, increase cash flow, and create passive income, all without the help of Wall Street. Are you ready to break through? Here are your hosts, Russ Morgan, Joey Murray, and Will DeShazer. Welcome to another episode of the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Today is a little bit different. Joey, Russ, I'm looking at a board game in our studio today. What's going on?
Well, don't we always like to play games, man?
Quit playing games with my heart.
We love to make work fun, right?
True.
That's one of the things we're all about.
Yes.
So I guess all this came out of, over the last couple of weeks, I'm rereading the famous Robert Kiyosaki book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Such a good book.
I'm sitting here telling Russ about it. It's like I'm reading it for the first time or something. I mean, all these things in the book, I'm just like, yes. Now, I probably read this thing 15 years ago, maybe.
Well, you and I had a discussion earlier this week, and you were like, dude, I'm rereading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Your mind was blown. I said, I had to read that in college in a class, but I haven't gone back and read it since.
Yeah, but your context drives so much of what you apply from what you're reading, what you're learning.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of talking to Russ about this earlier, but it's kind of like when you're reading the Bible. You could read the same thing over 1 year over the next and get a totally different application from it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're talking about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and we've referenced the book Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash in a lot of our podcasts. And I mean, being one of our mentors, actually somebody we got to eat dinner with last night, it's one of those things where I go back and I read in his book, and he was telling us to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Forever ago. He was telling us to buy the game board that's actually sitting in front of us, Cash Flow, which is a financial tool that Robert Kiyosaki created that you and I have used to teach audiences. I mean, we were teaching doctors last night. We were teaching realtors at the beach a couple of weeks ago. We're teaching dental students about a month ago this game. And these tools go back to the basics, but it is amazing how these books that we read years ago, we don't even think about all the different things that are in them until we start digging through them.
Yeah, I hate to even make this reference, but I'm going to go there. You know, when you're growing up, and
somebody mute his mic.
when you're growing up and you realize, like, through your teenage years, like your parents know nothing. You're just like, man, my parents are just so dumb. They don't get it. And then you get into college and beyond, you're like, man, they actually knew a little something. Like, it's all starts to make sense what they're actually been teaching me my whole life. The more we read, the more we learn, the more I know Nelson in his book is just right on point. And so, but all that being said, this game we're going to talk about today, Cash Flow. First of all, if you have never heard of it, you need to go out and search it. Look online. You can get it on Amazon.
They just released actually a new version. The one we have is now outdated. Maybe it's like Best Buy when you get a new refrigerator and then or TV and
you got to get the new one because I've struggled to win this game the last couple of times I've played it, and I feel like it's because maybe I've moved on with my education and the book and the game is behind. Is that what you're saying?
Or maybe it's because you were playing the kids version.
That's right.
Which there is a kids version.
I own the kids version, and yes, my kids can beat me in that. And it's called Cash Flow for Kids, and it is an awesome way. I mean, these games are basically teaching you the concepts that the rich understand, but everybody else is not taught. And this, I mean, when we were there last night and the other times we've been teaching, it's amazing the concepts that come out of that.
Yeah. And I think if there's anything that when we lead off in teaching this, we're saying we're going to simplify the things that are somewhat confusing. I mean, I think we talk about Wall Street a lot, obviously, on this podcast, but the Wall Street mindset is set to confuse. Really, it's important that they confuse us or they keep things complex that really are simple, like
interest rates. Think about that last night when we were talking last night, Will, with this group of, we had like 15, 20 doctors, something like that. And we're talking about things. And in this game, only objective, the way you win, the way you get out of the rat race, as Kiyosaki
So that's what this
describes
rat
it.
right here.
Yeah.
That's what it's about, is when you have more passive income than you have monthly expenses. So you're giving these different choices throughout the game to make decisions on, do you take this opportunity or do you not? Or do you take money and pay off a debt or do you not? And one of the times I asked, well, should we pay off a debt? Should we pay off this credit card? Or should we pay off one of the debts? And one of the doctors said, yeah, well, we should definitely pay off the credit cards because they've got to be the highest interest rate. And we sarcastically or inquisitively ask, well, where's the interest rates on the board? Where does it say the interest rates? And they start looking. I mean, they're devouring this page. They're looking at their balance sheet, their income statement that we have them filling out, and they can't find it. And I said, interest rates are truly there to only confuse you.
That's right.
And they were just like looking at me dumbfounded, like, what do you mean? Interest rates are not what we should be interested in. But that's the carrot that the financial institutions throw out in front of us. Hey, by the way, you're going to earn 15% on this. Oh, by the way, it's going to cost you, 10% or 0% interest or whatever those things are. Interest rate is a game that can be manipulated so much.
It's a fish hook.
Yeah. No, and it's not that rates don't matter, but we have to understand more context behind them. And in this game, it was about cash flow. It had nothing to do with the rate. Now, the rate may have dictated how much or how little cash flow you had, but simplified it. And people confuse it with rates of return.
Right. And I think, the same would apply if you could visualize this income statement and balance sheet. We're talking about mortgages on there too, right? And we asked again, well, what was the interest rate on when you bought that rental house on that mortgage? They're like looking all over the place. It's not there. All that was important for winning the game was how much cash flow it either cost you on your primary mortgage, which is really a liability, right? Or how much you're going to gain from that rental property. In fact, we actually talked about interest rate is the only factor that people usually consider when they're buying a house.
And why? Because it's so emotional. Think about it in your world, Joey, being in the mortgage industry for 10, 11, 12 years. How many times do people call you when interest rates are dropping or interest rates are rising to make decisions? It's so emotionally based.
Well, and it's one of the greatest marketing jobs of all time, right? Banks understand that they have us bought in hook, line, and sinker. The interest rate is what drives those phone calls. But at the end of the day, and I just want to reference back to the podcast we did about mortgages, there's way more costs that have to be considered. It's not just the interest rate.
So there are a few cards sitting in front of me. One is the Doodad card. I don't know if we're going to touch that one today. The other is the market card. One is a big deal and one is a small deal. Now, the big deal and small deals are green and they're considered opportunity cards. So let me read you guys one of these quote unquote small deal opportunity cards.
All right.
It says mutual fund, which we all know we love. This is called the Grow For Us Fund.
Oh, yeah. Why wouldn't it?
Might as well be guaranteed. It's got weak earnings. This says weak earnings by most companies lead to weak price of mutual fund. Only you may buy as many units as you want at this price. Everyone may sell at this price. So today's price is $10. There is no dividend. The trading range is $10 to $30. Do you buy or do you pass?
Wait, what was the price again?
Today's price is $10.
$10.
The trading range is $10 to $30. There is no dividend.
So this is one of those cards we break down, right? In our game, we're trying to decide, would that be a good purchase for us? So you said the range was between $10 and $30, and it's selling at $10. That seems pretty good, right? When you're buying something, if you're going to buy something, do you buy high or do you buy low?
Me or you should buy low.
You would buy low. Now, how much cash flow did it say it was going to give us?
Meh.
0, right? So in this game, this context, cash flow wise, it would not be providing as income. So while that may be a great purchase for a growth opportunity, it doesn't produce passive income. Well, let me give you another example. And this was one of the ones that came up last night, was the idea of, oh, wow, the general market strength leads to well-managed funds price to the strongest levels. The price of the mutual fund is $30 and its trading range is between $10 and $30.
Is this my Grow for Us fund?
Yes,
I'm
it is.
cashing out.
It's the same. It's the same one. That's right. So you could have bought, or you may have sold at that time. So like if you had bought it at $10 and now they're giving you the opportunity to sell it at $30, that's where you would put some cash in your pocket and then go out and find maybe a cash flowing opportunity. So there are opportunities to find those sort of things. But here's the funny thing that and we identified this yesterday is the fact that, okay, this growth mutual fund is selling at $30 a share and the trading range is between $10 and $30 a share. And we asked the group, should we buy or should we pass? You know, it shouldn't be surprising to you. They're all like, no, we should pass.
And so it was so clear, right? It was crystal clear to a group that would admittedly say they don't have much financial education. But what we did is we just quickly said, okay, well, let's really apply this. What is the trading range of the Dow Jones right now today? Over the last year, it's between about 18,000 to 22,800. Guess where we are today on the price? 22,800. Is there any clearer depiction that we're in the middle of that card right now? And what are we being told to do?
Why?
Buy.
Why?
Buy a house. Buy.
Why?
Because it stimulates the economy. And because
Emotion.
you could miss out because it could get to 26 next week.
Oh,
It's emotion. It is completely greed and emotion driving the purchase decisions. And that's what Wall Street does, right? It's not factual information that is driving the market anymore. It is emotion. We are making decisions based upon the assumption that it's going to keep going up, not based upon, is this going to produce money back in my pocket? Very mathematically, very simply. And it was a really great card for us to share with the group when you see that the math of that. Well, but what's something else? I mean, because sometimes there's these good opportunities, there's bad opportunities. When do we invest? When do we not? I mean, these are some of the things we're learning through the game.
Yeah. Like when should you pay a debt versus use that money to create passive income?
well, and before we go into that, let me bring something up that came up last night. So the opportunity is not good or bad in some cases. Some cases, it's the timing of it, right? So early on in the game, just one of the things that was going on, you're adding cash every time you get a paycheck, right? Every time you go around the board, you get a paycheck. So early on, they're sitting around $7,000, maybe $9,000 in the bank, quote unquote. Well, an opportunity for this mutual fund where you could have bought at $10 in that range might have been good if you were sitting on a ton of extra cash. But at that time, we didn't have a lot of extra cash. So the timing of it was also important.
So what is a good time? Like that's a question you always get, like this whole emergency fund, opportunity fund, like when do you take advantage of opportunities? How do you know when is a good opportunity for you to take advantage of an opportunity?
Right. And I think the first thing we have to go back to, again, how do you win the game? If it's going to put money into your pocket, it's an asset. That's what one of the things we differentiated last night. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out. So in some cases, we think an opportunity is something is great, but we really back it down. Like let's say a piece of land, for instance, that comes up in this game a good bit. Buy this piece of land, zero cash flow, and the only way out is to hope that the market pulls a profit down the road.
Right. It's just a
Someone's willing to buy it.
strategy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's a buy and hope strategy.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Exactly. So again, we're not saying necessarily land
Unless
is a
you
bad
pay
thing.
me to hunt on that land, and then you have created.
There you
a
go.
passive income
So how
resource.
can we make it, right?
Right.
But the point is we always have to think about opportunities as not necessarily good or bad inherently, but sometimes the timing, and sometimes we're really trying to get to this financial freedom and increase our passive income, is it providing that or not? So just a point I wanted to make there.
Well, I do think it's important to know that the opportunities that come along, we have to be looking for them. And that was one of the things that came up last night. It was amazing. One of the doctors raised their hand and said, I mean, you're talking about some great things and these opportunities, but I just don't ever see them. Well, she said, I don't even know where they are. Where would I even take advantage of opportunity? Now, these are individuals who are wealthy, who by all terms are looked upon from their peers and their friends as the people to give advice on finance, because since you make money, you must by default understand money.
That's scary.
But that is true. They're asking. I asked the question, how many of you are asked by people on a regular basis what to do with money?
Oh.
And almost all the hands go up. But yet, how much were you ever taught about how money works in all of your schooling? And they're like, yeah, no, none of that was ever taught to us. So they're by default supposed to understand how money works, but they've never learned. And you were talking about Robert Kiyosaki, talking about in his book,
Oh, yeah.
how often to this day, he still goes to 2 or 3 real estate conferences a year
To educate himself.
and he's been investing in real estate for 30, 40 years and have made multi-millions in it. But yet people assume that just because I make money, I automatically understand it.
The other point we brought up was, if you're not trained to look for something, you're not going to see it. So for instance, if you're trained to think, I need to give my money over to somebody else, they're going to invest it into mutual funds or whatever it might be, then you're not going to inherently look for other opportunities.
You're never going to be looking for. You mentioned a term that we learned a long time ago, the reticular activating system.
What?
Here's just a fancy
It
way of
sounds
that.
really, really smart.
I would tell you this.
Is that trademarked? That's incredible. The reticular what?
Yeah, the reticular activating system is basically what your brain does whenever it's reacting to something that you are keenly looking into. So, for instance, you got engaged not too long ago, right? That means that you bought a ring and gave it to Haley. Now, you may have never looked at rings prior to that. But I promise you, whenever you're around other females, you look down and you see what kind of ring she's got.
Yeah.
What's that one look like?
You're right.
How does that compare to the one
and
I
when you
have?
buy a new car,
Same
you happen to
thing.
see that car everywhere. You're like, I thought I was original by getting a Ford Fiat. They're everywhere. What's going on? I don't drive a Ford Fiat, by the way. But it was in my mind.
But that is the thing, is that your brain is keenly aware of it. So that was the point we were making, is once you train yourself on what opportunities look like, then you're going to start seeing them everywhere. I mean, that's where our inbox, the people we're around, they're talking about things and we're going, ooh, that could be an opportunity.
Right.
Now, remember, all opportunities are not good.
Right.
They also are equally as bad. And we have to be trained to understand how to decipher a good opportunity from a bad one. And that's why we started looking at the trading ranges. And it's the same thing for buying a house. Here's an example from the book. It says you can buy a house as a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Its cost is $65,000. It may sell between $65,000 and $135,000. Would you think, well, that on its own is a good deal, right?
Russ, if you can show me a 3-2 right now, that's $65K, even here in Birmingham, Alabama. I don't care if it's
He is looking for
135.
that house.
I will make that deal with
But
you.
this
right
may be
now.
in like Guatemala or something.
Yeah,
I don't know
true.
like where it's
Sure,
at.
but yeah, that's a great. It is cash flowable. Does it say that?
Its cash flow is $160 a month.
Yeah. Sure.
Well, and remember the whole point of this concept in this book is to get you to think about, okay, what is cash flow? And then how much will I put down? One of the concepts we taught last night was return on investment. How do you even calculate that? Most people don't even know how to calculate return on investment. Do you know what it is, Will?
Well, to put the basis, hopefully you get a return of the investment before anything.
Yes. And I did ask that question. What's more important, return on your money or return of your money?
Yeah, right.
And by the way, most of them got it wrong. They were like, is it return on it? I'm
That's
like,
right.
well, how about if I tell you I'll give you 20% and you never get any of it back? Are you excited about that? Or if I just say, I'll make sure you get all your money back, what's more important to you? Well, that's the same thing here. Return on investment is basically nothing more than what the monthly cash flow is times 12 to get an annualized number, and then divide that into how much you actually put
Right.
down. So in this example, the cash flow was $160 a month and the down payment was $5,000. So if you take 160 times 12 and you divide it into 5,000, that gave you 38%. So it helped them understand, okay, now I can measure that against something else. I can measure that of, should I go pay off a debt?
Right. That was eye-opening, I think, to a lot of people. And more that we share this, the more things start to click. So if I've got the same thing would be true if I was paying off a debt. If it was $100 a month and it was going to cost me $10,000. The payment, let's say, is $100 a month, and it was $10,000 out of my pocket to pay it off. So what's the math on that?
What's it? It's $1,200 divided into 10,000, right? So is that 12%?
So 12%.
Yeah.
Right. So if somebody's sitting there and they could have bought this particular home, or they could have paid off a credit card that was going to be 12%, it becomes more clear, what should I do if I'm going to get out of the rat race?
Right.
So I love the picture this game really paints for you.
But here's the beautiful part, and we're getting to it last, but it's one of the first things we did when we were talking last night. And what Kiyosaki has you do in this game board, he has you pick your dream. Like, what are you going to do once you're out of the circle in the middle, which is the rat race? Like, what would you choose to do with your time?
I'm looking at mine, and unfortunately, it would not be save the ocean mammals. However, being a jet setter, traveling, right? Like, that's one of my, I love to travel, and I want to show Haley, my fiance, the world together. And so be a jet setter. You can, I'm reading it off the board. Have your own personal jet available for 1 year to whisk away wherever, whenever your heart desires. That sounds cool. Sign me up. That's my doodad. Is that what you call these?
No, that's your dream. That's your dream. Is an expense. And those come, and that was
let's hit on that real quick.
Hold on, let's think with this, because I do think this is important, because not enough people dream. Not enough people think through, if I were financially independent, if I were financially free, what would I do? And if what you think of and what you put before you, you will move toward. So don't lose focus on what your goals in life are. Make those opportunities, put them right in front of you. Have, and I've done this before, and I know you have too, is put together a vision board.
Yes.
And things that you really want to happen, and your brain and your body will start moving you toward those things. And last night we heard some really great things. We heard more time with children. We heard more travel. These things became the things that they were talking about. And at the same time, what are the things that you want to get away from? And like the worry and the pressure and all of those things, by not being financially free, comes out too. And that, to me, is why we do what we do. That's what we love, is that we get to teach people financial independence, because we can help them accomplish what you just said, to be a jet setter. Or maybe it is to, I had one person to say, to be more charitable. They love to have their practice to actually be able to give more time to their patients. Instead of having to see 30 patients, I could see 10 and actually spend more time with them, or I could give away my services for free, or whatever it is. I mean, those are the things that you're afforded the opportunity to do when you're in that position.
Yeah. And I think another thing that we kind of pointed out in this game was, it's not necessarily that you have to leave your job per se, that like the goal is just to get away from your job, but it is getting away from the pressure of having to go. Right. We mentioned this last night and multiple occasions here. The person that is truly free is that person that's driving to work because they want to, because they love what they do. They want to have an impact.
Right.
And they can do it through the things that they're gifted in doing. But when they feel that pressure of having to be there, having to take on more responsibility or whatever it might be, because of those bills continue to come in, that's when you feel just in a prison.
The freedom comes in knowing that you could quit tomorrow, sell that business, and your cash flow, really and truly, like, you have enough to cover your expenses and more, because you are financially free. And Robert Kiyosaki talks about the differences. Is that in Cash Flow Quadrant, his second book?
Yeah. And
or third book, I guess maybe that is.
Yeah, you start getting into, how do you think about the different areas in which you're in? I always think back to one of the original books that I learned in business, The E-Myth. And the book Michael Gerber wrote was where he was talking about the fact that, you get somebody who is just passionate about whatever job they were. And an example in his book that I remember was the baker. This person who just loved to bake, learned how to bake with their grandmother. And it was a passion that she had, and she wanted to give that gift to other people. She wanted to be able to sell her goods and share with the world her love of baking. But through the pressures that came of running that business and not understanding how it worked and all the other things that come along with then having to pay the bills and all the other stuff, it became a burden, and she hated it. the thing that she loved initially became the thing that she hated. And that's what I love about this game. It gives us an idea to help our minds start breaking free of how to do that.
So I'm going to bring up one more thing that's on the game here, and it's the Doodad Cards. Okay, so the Doodad Cards are things that happen either to you or they're just required things that have to be done that you may not have been expecting. For instance, here's one: repaint the house. Cost you $600. That's probably a deal, by the way.
That's right. Like, what did you paint? Like 2 rooms or something?
Yeah. How about having to buy some new music CDs?
Having to
$100 worth of them.
Is that, maybe that's the reason they're updated it. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
There's
Because
some kids playing this like, what's a CD?
yeah, right. Oh, for sure. And Joey just got new car tires. Joey, were those car tires $300 for all 4 of those?
No,
Yeah.
no, that's a discount right there. But here's the other thing. There's other parts in here where it's like, hey, buy your kid a certain thing, whatever it was, toys or maybe it was a vacation or whatever, birthday party. And here's one thing that we kind of talked about last night, and I think is important. You need to be partnered with the right financial coach who understands that life is not about deferring your life to a time in the future. And I'm not going to single anybody out, but you hear this, hey, we need to live like no one else so we can live like no one else later. But we're not promised tomorrow, are we?
No.
And so if you've got kids or our lives are full of times that we can never get back. So guess what? You should have the freedom in your financial plan or in your journey to getting to financial freedom to spend that money on the family vacation. Because guess what? 5 years from now, 10 years from now, if it takes you that long, your kids aren't going to want to do the same things that they are today.
No.
I'm seeing my kids' lives just screen past me.
Yeah.
And guess what? I am not going to look back and wish I had done less.
No, I think that's a great point, and we can start wrapping it up with that. But that is the idea of learning, return on information is important. And it's the idea of, like you said, the more we understand what's going on around us, the more we know what to do. And then we start seeing those opportunities, just like we talked about last night. And then we start saying, it is pretty absurd that I'm buying the market right now when it's at its all-time high. Why should I do that? Everybody talks about, buy high, sell low.
No, that's not how it goes.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the opposite.
It's opposite day.
But that is what people do. They're buying high, and then when the market crashes, that's when they sell. But the thing is, right now, the only way you can buy is what? If somebody is selling. So the people making money right now are selling the market, not buying it. They're selling it.
That's right. Well, and
that's a great point, by the way.
Just to wrap this up, I know we've talked about, you just got done talking about return on information. And Will, I'm hoping we can just add in our show notes all the different books we referenced today. So Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash, must read. Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Go get the game. Go buy it today on Amazon or wherever you're going to get it from. And then you just talked about the E-Myth as well. Also just really, really good book for those of you business owners or aspiring business owners. So that's the way you're going to continue to be educating yourself and putting yourself in a position to get to financial freedom.
So that when you'll start seeing these things, like we talked about,
that's
the reticular activating system, you'll go, man, yeah, I see that opportunity everywhere now because I now know what to look for.
And that's where it all begins. It all begins, Joey, with what you just mentioned, return on information, investing in yourself first, right? The time and effort and energy that it takes to read these books. A book is $10, $12. That's not the expensive part. The expensive part is rereading it and rereading it again and taking notes on it and then applying it. So I'm going to challenge you today to go out and do that. Do exactly what Joey said. Head over to our website, wealthwithoutwallstreet.com, and we're going to have some show notes here for you concerning this episode. You can find all the links to all the resources that we talked about and everything that was discussed in the show. Greatly encourage you to pick up Cash Flow, or you two play with your kids, right? You both own the Cash Flow for Kids game. What a really great way to instill this same knowledge of how to build wealth without Wall Street in your kids and your children. And how old are your kids?
From 4 to 12, mine.
Yep, 11 down to 4.
And-
My 9-year-old just waxed me the other night.
So most of
just
them can
saying.
participate.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. This is such a great generational tool to pass wealth down and these nuggets of information that you can learn from it. So head on over to the site and pick that up, and we will see you next episode. This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your terms in places you understand so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.